following is a special presentation of the Arkansas Sports Network.
Welcome back into the Arkansas Sports Network exclusive interviews. And today I've got a good one for you. We've got Bobby Swofford here of the Arkansas Activities Association. Man, I'm glad to be here. Glad to have you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's always good to talk about what we can do to make education-based athletics in Arkansas better.
Absolutely. We're going to touch on a lot of things today. There is so much to talk about when it comes to you guys, when it comes to athletics in the state of Arkansas. We want to just touch base on a lot of things, kind of get the perspective from the Arkansas Activities Association about where things are, where things are going. Let's talk about gripes and complaints. We'll talk about it all here today.
There's none of those, right?
None.
No one complains about anything.
None at all. But anyway, let's get into it. Before we started recording this, you were telling me a little bit about your background. I had no idea. So let's talk about your background.
Yeah. So my dad was a coach. So I was a typical coach's kid. He was a head coach at Horatio, football coach, when I was born. The day I was born, in fact, he got the head coaching job at Lamar. And so we were 10 days old when I moved to Lamar. Lived there for about 3 years, and he was the head coach. And then he took a job closer to home. He was from Fort Smith. Took a job right across the river in Oklahoma at Roland. He stayed there until he still lived there to this day, and that's where I graduated high school. I played football at the University of Central Arkansas in Conway. Started my media career when I was in college. I worked for the Log Cabin Democrat for a couple of years. Then I went to Fort Smith as a newspaper reporter first for 6 years at the Times Record. And then I made the jump to television. I actually majored in broadcast journalism, made the jump to television, worked at KFSM, the CBS affiliate there in Northwest Arkansas between Fort Smith, and then eventually moved to Fayetteville. Did that for almost 10 years before I got lucky enough to join the AAA.
Yeah, so that's where I remember Bobby Swofford from, was KFSM and your TV reporting and all of that went with that. So, yeah, so when you came here, obviously I knew a little bit about you. Obviously you didn't know anything about me, but anyway, so you're an Arkansas kid. I mean, I know that you went to school in Roland, but really you're an Arkansas kid. You chose
Fort Smith.
Right,
let's be real about that.
That's true, right? It definitely is. If you've ever been over there, I mean, Dora, Muldrow, Roland.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Roland's
right
always first. Don't forget that Bulldogs. Roland's always first.
Right, absolutely. Isn't Muldrow the Bulldogs too?
They are.
Yeah,
that's why I said that.
There you go. I gotcha. All right. Well, anyway, let's talk a little bit about your job here at the AAA.
Yeah. So the other duties as assigned, that last line of your contract, I do a lot of that. But I'm the communications and technology director here at the AAA. I handle all public relations. I'm also our main contact with Arkansas TV, which used to be PBS, making sure of course, all the television broadcasts for football, volleyball, basketball, baseball, softball. That list is going to grow next year. What we're able to put on television. So kind of spearhead that. And then I help run all the events. So as far as the state tournaments, the state finals, it's kind of a conglomerate here at the AAA. Now, not one person is in charge of everything because there's just too much to do.
Right. So are you willing to throw out what's going to be next?
It's kicked around.
Okay.
If you can read into that. We're looking to add soccer. We were probably going to add soccer this past year, but obviously all the changes with Arkansas TV they had with the state legislator in the state taking over that, we had to kind of put that on hold. But we're looking into adding soccer for sure. So it's not going to be a weekend of champions anymore. It's going to be a week of champions.
Oh, wow.
Looking to move soccer up a couple days, so make sure that everybody has a time slot. People have always asked, hey, why isn't soccer on TV now? It's just because you can't have two games going on at the exact same time on television, on the same channel. So we're going to move some things around and make sure that baseball, softball, and soccer are going to be on TV. We're talking about some other things, some other events being televised next year. But nothing's set in stone yet.
Wow, that's a great thing. And it's a great thing for the people of Arkansas to be able to see the finals. I don't know how many states do that. I would assume it's fairly unique.
Yeah, it's not very prevalent. There's some states that say, hey, we're going to put football. Hey, we're going to put basketball on TV. There's very few that have the gender equality that Arkansas is doing. Obviously, football and volleyball, both boys and girls basketball, baseball and softball. There's not many states that do that. We're the only state in the country that has review for baseball and softball.
Yeah.
The National Federation gave us that experiment license, if you will, for 3 years. And so we now have review in the seventh inning or extra innings to make sure that we get calls right in the biggest game of the year. Again, the only state in the country that has that. So we're looking as far as the technology side and promoting our young people, celebrating their successes. We want to be the front of the line for that.
That's a great thing. And to know that Arkansas is at the forefront of that. It's awesome because, I mean, let's be honest, Arkansas is not at the forefront of a lot of things. So that's a great thing here. Let's talk about the finals and this last weekend, but also just kind of the overview of the whole for the 25-26 school year. Obviously, one of the things that come out of the finals, anything can overshadow, right? I mean, you've got all these winners, but there was complaints about the softball and the field and the setup and all of that stuff at Majestic Park. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there is one softball facility in the state of Arkansas that's really equipped to host our championships, and that's Bogle Park in Fayetteville. The problem with that is, guess what? They're pretty good too, and they're still playing, and they were using their facility this time of year. So whether it's regionals and super regionals or just the continuation of their regular season, that's not really an option for us. And we have to make sure that baseball and softball are in the same place for fans. We had 4 teams who played in both the baseball and softball championships. So imagine if those were in 2 different cities. And whether we get 2 different regions, whether it was Fayetteville and North Little Rock or Fayetteville and Hot Springs, we can't split them up. You got to be close together, and obviously soccer's in that equation as well. So when you have one facility that can really house you, you have to look for other options. And the way that we do our championships, our state tournaments, our regional sites, is those schools or those venues have to want to do it. We don't go out and say, "Hey, you're hosting this." And so it's called a bid process, but it's more of a site selection process. But they have to tell us, "Hey, we want to be able to host this." And Majestic Park and Hot Springs came forward to this and said, "Hey, we want to be able to host this." It's a requirement now based on what we saw last year with weather. You have to have 100% turf field for baseball and softball, and you have to have permanent lined fields for soccer because we played at Estes Stadium in Conway at UCA last year. Well, all the rain we had washed away the lines. And so, baseball went off perfectly, but of course, softball, there were a lot of complaints, and honestly, they're valid complaints. They're all baseball fields. But so it wasn't necessarily marked, and the permanent lines weren't there for softball. The scoreboard wasn't, what they were used to. But by the time we left Majestic Park this weekend, they had already brought to us the outline of a plan to make all of those changes for next year. And you think about the amount of rain that we got this weekend. If we played anywhere else, we weren't going to be able to play. If we were playing on grass and a natural surface, we would have been playing on Wednesday or Thursday of this week at the amount of rain that we got. So the fact that Derek Phillips and his crew down at Majestic Park were able to get those games in this past weekend is second to none. Tip of the cap to them for doing a great job. But we heard the complaints. We're not deaf to it. We were wanting to celebrate the success of those kids this weekend. That's why we didn't talk about it this weekend. That's why you might have saw a no comment. I gave the no comment. I'll take the onus for that. We wanted to talk about the good things this weekend. We'll worry about the negative now.
Let's just talk about an overview of the year. I mean, it was a great year for high school sports around the state. We had the one black eye with the situation at Poen, but overall, how do you think that the 25-26 school year went?
It's good. What we're seeing is participation numbers are still up. And that's what we want. Overall, we're trying to add more and more activities. So that's the most important thing. Are our young people getting out there and competing and participating and trying to get the skills they need necessary to be a successful human being? And obviously, as a coach's kid, I know how important sports are to the development of young people, whether it's discipline, teamwork, being able to be relied upon. Those are the things that you get from sports that you don't necessarily get in other activities. And so that's why we're big about pushing that. It was a great year. You go all the way back to football, to basketball, to the spring sports. But sportsmanship is a rising concern, not only in Arkansas, but across the country. Because we're starting to see it more at the college level, the lack of sportsmanship, the jawing, of course, especially in the spring sports even. You get a strikeout. We saw it some in our championship games. Some sportsmanship wasn't what I would say was the best. Everybody points to the big brawl. We understand that, but that was nowhere near the only altercation that we had. So ours coming up in the proposals in the activity districts and the governing body from the summer, there is a proposal out there about maybe pushing up the severity of punishments for if you're involved in an altercation, because everybody is in agreement that can't happen. You can't allow your emotions to overrun without there being consequences. Because everybody should have been talking about what a great state tournament that Poen put on. Instead, a game which had 13 police officers on site. When's the last time you went to a basketball game and saw 3, let alone 13? wasn't able to control it because you got 200 people that want to rush the court, and their first thought is, hey, I'm going to jump over this rail and grab a chair, instead of, hey, let's try to be a good example for our young people.
Right.
So yes, that's the black eye. But overall, when you look at the entire school year, it was a really good year.
Yeah. And I would say for the whole, like, we could talk about the few black eyes here and there, and it's easy to dwell upon those negativity. And we see that a lot, not just with those situations, but with just complaints and different things. I mean, Facebook, Twitter, all of those things, whatever it is called now, X, that gives people a platform to do so. But really, when you look at it as a whole, it was more positive, much more positive than what's negative.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is to make sure that these students have a platform to go out there and compete and become better people. We don't care who wins. Contrary to what a lot of people think, we don't care who wins or loses.
Right.
We want them to have the platform to go out there and be successful, and we want their coaches to have the resources they need to be successful, whether that's coaching education, whether that's state required classes, whether it's AED, CPR. We want to make sure everybody is equipped with proper safety protocols, and really, let's have fun. It's what sports are all about. Go out there and have fun. It doesn't matter if you're 4, 14, or 40. Sports are supposed to be fun.
It's supposed to be a game, right?
That's right.
Still. And I know that people take it so seriously.
They do.
And it has, the emotions have gotten higher. Let's talk about referees.
Okay.
Let's talk about that a little bit. It seems like year in and year out, you're having more trouble getting referees. Talk a little bit about that.
We're really lucky. With the Arkansas Officials Association, which falls under our umbrella, in most sports are up to pre-COVID numbers. And most states cannot say that. In fact, there are bordering states for us who are playing games on Thursday nights because they need to steal our officials to play their games.
Wow.
Especially in football. But we're in a really good spot. Of course, we can never have enough. You can never have enough young talent. You can never have enough good talent. And so we're always trying to recruit new officials. If you need to find a way to how do you become official, just reach out to us and we'll get you through the steps, because we try to make it as easy as possible. But we give you the training, we give you the coaching clinics, we try to do everything we can. But we're really lucky. We've got a lot of really good officials. Who's benefiting from that are the Division II schools in our state as well, because they're poaching our officials.
Right.
And that's a good problem to have, because when you've got higher levels come in to get your officials, that means you've got people who are doing the right things.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about that, though. And this is going back into the sportsmanship. You see states that are even banning people from coming and different things of that nature. What is the solution to that? What is a thing that people can do? I know it's common sense to say, let's back off a little bit.
Yeah.
But what is it that we can do to help that situation?
Well, it really starts with the schools, because they govern their own events during the regular season. And so when you have a presence, and I'm not talking about a police presence, when you have an administrative presence at these games, and when somebody speaks up and they're clearly crossing a line, you have someone step up immediately. Right. But when you allow something to happen week after week or game after game, they're going to think they can get away with that and behave that way. So the schools have a lot of the power when it comes to that. When it gets to the postseason, it's already a lost cause, because if they're allowed to behave that way all season long, then the host site's not really going to be able to do anything. But it's really up to those host schools to step in. If Brad Caldwell is over there running his mouth all game long, yelling at the umpires, yelling at the opposing coach, guess what? You're going to think you can do that in the playoffs.
Yeah, right.
Well, so now your school administrator or whoever that home team needs to come in and say, hey, Brad, if you don't knock it off, we're going to send you home. Right. And then if you get sent home more than once in a year, you're likely going to be banned for the entire season. Right. And that's the stance that schools need to take.
Let me brag on Fordyce a little bit. We actually had a situation in the stands. We were broadcasting the semifinal game, I believe. The week before, we were there for the quarters as well. We had a situation with a guy. He'd come up. He was very vocal with us because he watches our stuff. We didn't pick Fordyce to do this, or we didn't. You know what I mean? And he was getting very vocal. Well, the next week, the second week, he got really vocal to the point that they had to remove him. And not only did they remove him, but they banned him. My understanding, they banned him for life. So with that said, I want to brag on Fordyce a little bit for being a little bit, of course, it's not toward the referees, but it was toward us, but it's the same ire no matter what, that they were able to control that situation.
Yeah, that's a great scenario in a situation where we're talking 99% of people do the right thing.
Exactly.
When you go to a basketball game, a football game, a spring sport game, 99% of people are doing it the right way. They're behaving the right way. They're cheering on their team. They're being respectful of the other team. They're being respectful of the officials. But there's that 1%. That 1% that leaves everybody else a bad taste in their mouth.
Right.
And you're never going to be able to solve the problem. Social media has certainly made it worse. It made people think that they have the platform, they can say whatever they want. That's fine. Everybody has their own opinion. That's why we love America, right?
Right.
But that 1% does make it worse for everybody else, because you're sitting there ranting and raving at a game. Well, the person next to you is just trying to cheer on their grandkid.
Right.
And so it's not a great spot. We understand that, sports are emotional. I get it. As a coach's kid, I understand sports are emotional. And now you got to win because of the new LEARNS Act. And, of course, being the ability to be non-renewed by schools, winning matters now.
Right.
You hate that. You never want that to be the case at high school and education-based athletics, but it's the world we live in.
Even if you win, there are certain coaches here in the state that have won and they still weren't renewed for whatever reasons.
Right.
But yes, it is a thing, and it has passed down. It used to be just the pros, and then it was college, and now it's even high school to where you have to win, or you're either going to want to be removed because people make it so miserable on you. Even me as a Pee Wee coach, I feel a little bit of pressure to win because of how emotional things are.
I give Little League and Pee Wee coaches or fans and parents a little more leeway, because a lot of times they've never done it before.
Sure.
They've never been a parent in that situation, and they start to see other parents behaving better. And so it's like, okay, maybe it's not normal for me to sit here and act like a crazy person.
Right.
Of course, they all don't figure that out, but eventually they do at some point.
Let's talk a little bit about streaming. I know that's a thing with the AAA, and you guys have done a great job of being able to incorporate that not only in the regular season, but in the playoffs as well. We have benefited greatly from the ability to go to a basketball tournament, volleyball tournament. We've been to baseball and softball now. Talk about companies like ours and what they've been to AAA.
Well, I mean, not only to the AAA, to the people of Arkansas. That's the biggest service that you guys are providing, is because guess what? When you play at 10 a.m., not everybody's going to be able to come to your game. So we want to be able to give fans the opportunity to watch no matter what. How much do we charge you guys to stream that state tournament?
$0.
So we're giving it away for free.
Right.
And so, but what we care about is celebrating these young people and making sure that parents can come out and watch these games. Because we partner with you and several other for the basketball tournament, and you guys and several other for the volleyball tournament and baseball and softball, because we want to be able to promote and build these sports and also celebrate the success of these young people and their coaches and their families. We also understand that Arkansas, and depending on where you live, can take 5 hours to get across. And so it's not really easy on a Tuesday or a Wednesday for you to drive from Bentonville to Little Rock, or from Jonesboro to Texarkana, or to Hamburg to Prairie Grove. We get that. And so that's why we want to be able to give the opportunity through you guys, the opportunity to watch these games online. And of course, we're part of the National Federation, which means we're a member of the National Federation Network, the NFHS network. And so all those games are sent to there. But as long as they don't come down and broadcast those games, we can do whatever we'd like. We're still the only state in the country that gives you every state tournament basketball game from every location, every classification, for free. And we pride ourselves on that. We don't make any money. You just said we don't make any money from you guys. It's not about money for us. It's about the exposure for these kids and these coaches and these programs.
And we have had college coaches pipe up in our chats saying, hey, who's this? How do I get this recording? Now, this was cross country just a few days ago, but we put it out there, Northwest Arkansas Community College. Hey, we're looking for opportunities. We're looking for kids that will want to come and continue their careers. So we've been able to help kids. I know that Williams Baptist told us they signed a kid because they watched our 3A coverage a few years back. So I think it's a benefit for everybody.
Yeah, I think so. And we as an organization think so, because it'd be really easy for us to say, yeah, you can do it for $5,000.
Right.
It'd be really easy for hey, $750 a game. We don't do that to companies that are willing to do the entire thing. Of course, there's fees that we have to pay to the NFHS network. So that's why schools are asking, well, why do we have to pay a fee? Well, that fee goes on. So that's not for us. That's not just to recruit lost tickets because you're watching on a live stream. We're a nonprofit organization. We have to give money back to the schools as it is, which is another thing that we don't talk about a lot. Over the last 7 or 8 years, we've given more than $3 million back to schools for school fees and dues, because that's what we are. We're going to share that revenue. If we're being successful, we want those schools to have that money back. And granted, we don't charge a huge fee per sport, but it's the school level. Any amount of money is a lot of money. Right. And so we want to be able to give that back as much as we possibly can.
one of the reasons that we're here today is you got a chance to see our interview with Coach Michael Banning there. He's got a proposal that's coming up about, competitive equity. That word is used a lot in this state, not only on that side of things with Coach Banning and his proposal, but also with the private schools and all that. There is a big conversation, and this is a conversation that's went on for many years about competitive equity. Private schools winning too much. Some of these schools now, like Coach Banning, he's talking about, we're not able to compete. We need to be able to get some help. How do we figure out how to allow people to be able to feel like that they can compete on each level?
Yeah, I mean, so about Coach Banning's proposal, and the best thing about the AAA is we are a 100% democratic organization. If a school wants to make a change, the school can propose to make a change. The people who are employed at the AAA, so myself and 12 other individuals in this building, have zero authority when it comes to rules, rule proposals, or rule changes. All we do is enforce the rules that the AAA member schools put into place. So we have a handbook that's 130 pages long. We wrote zero of it. All of that, 130 pages of it, has been approved and voted on by the member schools. Any rule change made by the member schools. And so that's what's great about the proposal. I'll kind of walk you through the steps of how that came about. Every year we have activity district meetings. There are 9 activity districts throughout the state based on geography. All you have to do is make that proposal to your activity district. And if you get 51% of the vote from the member schools in your activity district, it goes to a statewide vote at the governing body, which is at the end of July. And so that's how Coach Banning and company, they submitted this proposal. They were able to propose it, if you will, to the schools in their activity district. It got more than 51%, and now it's going to go to a statewide vote.
And that's what, July the 27th?
Yeah, I believe it's the last Monday in July. We do it at the State House Convention Center. Everybody in this, every member school has one vote. So it doesn't matter if you're the biggest school, which I believe is Bentonville on the new count, or if you're the smallest school, whether you're Lifeway Christian or Decatur or Episcopal. I can't remember, who might be the smallest public or non-public school. It doesn't matter. You get one vote. That's really how it is. And so it's not skewed just because you're a bigger school district. Your voice is not any bigger than anybody else. Right. So everybody has an equal voice. And that's what's the beauty of the AAA is because if you're a member school, you get one vote.
And that's the way it goes. A lot of talk, Facebook. It's like the problem of the world in some ways, right? I mean, we couldn't exist without Facebook. We couldn't exist without YouTube. But at the same time, it just gives so much to allow people to say things that they wouldn't normally say without or in your presence. You get a lot of talk. AAA this, AAA that. Talk about just what you guys and your stance is when it comes to people complaining, and I know not necessarily complaining, but just the chatter that goes on around the Arkansas Activities Association. AAA does these things bad and this thing bad, and we talked a little bit about this and how that people now these days feel like they can do it better, right? Everybody feels like they can come in and solve the problem, but nobody seems to want to do it.
Right. Well, I mean, we are the tax man.
Right.
Everybody wants to complain about it when you have to pay taxes, right?
Right.
Nobody says anything good about you when you get that refund check, right? So I mean, that's but we understand that. We take this job or work here knowing perfectly well that it's a thankless job.
Right.
I mean, we're the janitor essentially.
Sure.
Like
the umpire.
Yeah, we're absolutely the umpire. That's probably a better analogy. But we want people's opinion.
Sure.
We aren't going to. We know that we're not going to sit here and get patted on the back. Understand that.
Right.
But we also need to hear those things. And don't get me wrong, I do not read the Facebook comments. That's I don't have the time in the day.
I understand.
But we hear it.
Right.
We get emails. We get phone calls. Our phone number is widely available here at the office. So I get text messages all the time from unknown numbers.
Sure.
It's like, hey, complaining about one thing or another. But that's how we're going to get better. Right. As most people in this building have been involved in sports.
Right.
And so I guess when you're involved in sports, you can take criticism a little more.
Right.
You got a little bit thicker skin. And so we know that, hey, this didn't work. Let's try it this way. Okay, It didn't work this way. Let's try it that way. But also, people don't know that everything that we do has been voted on and approved by the member schools.
Right.
So we're just doing what the schools put into place. And I know that we're going to talk about Coach Banning's proposal and what competitive equity means. That's voted in by the member schools,
Right.
not by the AAA. And so we are trying to work with the member schools. We're trying to work with the public schools. We're trying to work with the non-public schools about, hey, what's going to be best?
Right.
And that's all we want. We want what's best for education-based athletics in Arkansas. And we understand that what worked 30 years ago is not going to work. And we understand that the changing landscape of today, what worked 5 years ago may not necessarily be working now.
So before we get into Coach Banning's proposal, and let's talk if you can tell us some about some of the other proposals that are available. We hear a lot. This is a huge complaint, and it comes from this phrase: why does a 5A school win a 4A championship?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And that is probably the one comment. I said I don't read the comments, but I know what they say. That is the one comment that is mentioned the most on social media. So let's take a prime example. Football 5A, you have 32 teams, right?
Yes.
Basketball 5A, you have 32 teams.
Right.
Well, football 4A, you have 48 teams. How many teams are in 4A basketball?
48.
Nope.
No,
59.
That's right.
Because the schools voted in different rules for football.
Right.
So what you have to do is, everybody always wants to talk about classification for football. Take your classification of football and throw it away. That doesn't matter. Football is the outlier. We have 178, I believe, 11-man football teams. We have 270 basketball teams.
Right.
So when you have 270 here and 175, 180 here, you can't put them in the same conference.
Sure.
Math doesn't math.
Right.
There's no 1A football. So guess what? If you play football as a 1A school, you play 2A because there's no classification smaller than that. A good example, basketball versus volleyball. 4A basketball, we have 50 schools that qualify for 4A girls basketball in the new cycle. There are 39 volleyball schools. And so we don't have the same number of participation. So if you just completely discard, hey, I'm a 5A football school, well, maybe that 4A school is playing up in football, and you never thought about it that way.
Right.
So the other sports classification, when you look at the numbers, is what you should pay attention to, not the football. Because the base. Because the other sports, they're not even. Everybody plays basketball. Right. So that's the classification you need to pay attention to. Because there are 4A schools out there that still don't play volleyball.
Right.
Which is still mind-boggling to think about. But not everybody plays every sport. So the classifications and the conferences, based on the rules put in by the member schools, aren't going to line up. Because the way football is, you have to have 8 teams per conference.
Right.
Basketball and every other sport is not that way. That's why you're going to have in volleyball, which is another proposal we'll talk about in a minute. In the 6A West this coming year, we've got 10 teams in the 6A West volleyball. There's only 7 in the Central. In football, you got to make Fortsman Northside go all the way to the 6A Central or 7A Central to play football. Well, in basketball and the other sports, because you're playing on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, you don't make them do that. So you've got uneven number of teams and conferences, which causes that variation.
Right. And that's all voted on, right?
All voted on.
Every
bit of that is approved by the schools, and if they want to change it, they can certainly do so. All they have to do is run a proposal and change it again.
So we're here because we did the interview with Coach Banning, and we talked about his proposal, which was for basically, in a nutshell, to drop a school one classification if they were unable to compete. Clarksville is a great example. I went to Huntsville. We lived in Huntsville. Huntsville's had some issues competing. Berryville up there, around there. He pointed out around 30 schools. He didn't name them all. I think Hope was one as well, where they're just having issues competing. On the other side of things, you have, certain private schools, but we only have, 10, 15 private schools? 10
private, maybe even less than that, but 10 football playing private schools.
And you've only got a handful, Shiloh Christian, Pulaski Academy. That's about it, really.
Little Rock Christian and Harding.
Yeah. Those are the ones that are really dominating football, but everyone else is not. How do you balance this? How do you make it work for everybody?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
With today's day and age of families being willing to move because of programs, and they do it at a young age, it is really hard to turn around programs. And it's not just football, baseball, basketball, soccer. We see it, we get it. Not everybody's going to be good.
Right.
But also have to remember that too. When you have conference standings and when you keep score, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. Right. But also we want kids to have the opportunity to have fun and participate and be equitable. But also what is put in place right now by the member schools is classifications are divvied up by enrollment. Yeah. And that's the way that things are set up now. What Coach Banning has proposed is started in a couple other states. But there are some unanswered questions about what it is. But again, if the member schools want it, they're going to vote it in. It already got out of their activity district, which a lot of times may be the hardest step. And so we're going to find out in late July if the rest of the state feels the way that Coach Manning does. I don't know if it's 30. I haven't done the math because I'm not going to worry about the what ifs. Right. I'm going to wait for the schools to tell us what they want, and then we'll worry about it from that point.
Now, if that were to go through, that wouldn't be implemented until 28/30. Is
correct.
That right?
That's correct.
So you've got 2 years to kind of plan for that. And what, just in general, what would go into the planning stages of something like that?
Yeah, so the way the proposal is written, and we have to 100% follow the proposal. Sure. We can't say, okay, it's been approved, we're going to tweak it. We don't have that authority. So what it's going to happen is if you lose 80% or more of your conference games 3 out of 4 years.
Yeah.
So you got to remember it, 3 out of 4. So it means you go 0-7. Maybe you go 4-3, 0-7, 0-7. I'm not a math guy, so but whatever. 20% or less of the 3 of those 4 years, you have the option to move down. Well, just some quick math looking at it. There's 3 schools at the 6A level that would have that option based on the last 4 years.
Right.
But what that doesn't do is replace teams in that classification.
Sure.
So everybody pushes down. Okay. So those 3 teams in 6A would push down. What it doesn't do is replace them.
Right.
So now the 7A Central, would have a 16 conference. So they would only have 5 conference games because you can't play yourself.
Sure.
So now they have to fill 5 slots of their non-conference schedule in weeks that other states aren't available, because those are the teams that can't schedule games as it is because they're so much bigger than everybody else. Nobody wants to play them. So now you say, hey, I'm going to play in week 0, 1, 2, 3. This 4 non-conference games. Maybe the states around us line up for that. What about that last game?
Right.
And the other conference already has more teams than that based on this scenario. And so are you going to tell Bryant and Conway and Cabot, hey, you only get 9 games? But also it changes the rules because the current setting is classifications or conferences have to be capped at 8 for football. And no, not 7, have to have 8. Well, you've only got 13 teams in your classification at that point.
Right.
So it would take a major reshuffling starting at the top, but also does that push a team down? So if those 3 teams drop to 6A, does that mean the bottom 3 teams enrollment-wise from 6A drop to 5A?
Right.
Or do you have a 19-team classification? And so there's a lot of questions that doesn't answer. Doesn't mean that it's a problem. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't vote for it.
Right.
It's just those are things that we're going to have to figure out with the member schools because they're going to have to vote on any potential changes.
What about other proposals that might be similar to that?
Yeah, so there's one that's coming out. It's a 6A only proposal coming out of Northwest Arkansas, also made it out of their activity district. It's when you have uneven number of teams in sports, because I mentioned, volleyball, basketball don't have the cap of 8. So we're going to see this coming fall in volleyball. There's going to be 10 teams in the 6A West and only 7 in the 6A Central. Shiloh Christian moves up, and we don't make Northside and Southside come over because it doesn't make sense to drive to Jonesboro or to Little Rock on a Tuesday night.
Right.
And so you're going to have 10 and 7. So their proposal is you take a percentage of teams to qualify for a state tournament based on the number of participants. So right now at 6A, you take the top 6 from each conference, 6 from the West, 6 from the Central. Well, in this proposal, it would change that from 6 and 6 to likely 7 and 5. So you would take 5 of the 7 who participate in the Central, and then 7 of the 10 who participate in the West. But what that would do in the very first round of the state tournament, that 7 seed has to replace someone on the bracket, so it's going to replace the 6 that leaves. You're going to play somebody from your own conference in the first round of the state tournament because there's no other way to avoid it.
Right.
Because you don't expand the bracket. It's still a 12-team bracket. So again, it's whatever the schools want to do, but that's another proposal we're going to see this summer.
It's interesting that when you're trying to make it work for everybody. I know one thing that a lot of people I hear say, why does conference-wise, you've got, I don't even know I believe Stuttgart and Highland might be in the same conference this year. Is that right? In football?
Maybe, yeah.
I think so. Or maybe it's basketball.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those where they're like driving for 3 hours.
Yeah.
How do you guys look at the map when you're dividing up? Okay, this is the 1, this is the 2. Mm-hmm. How do you look at that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's a reason that we started releasing the maps with our conference assignments, and so people can see. Yeah, there are big gaps, but also it's based on the number of teams in that classification that participate in that sport. And so what you do is we take a pin and put it into a map. Now it's digital and it has their exact address. And so what you do is you run the mileage literally for every school to every other school, and then you get a number. And then you move that, say, if it's Highland, for example, you move that school from the 2 to the 3. I'm just making up numbers.
Sure.
And then you run the mileage for every school again.
Right.
And then you try to find out the best number for everybody in both conferences. So because everybody's like, oh, it's really easy. Like, oh, Harding and Searcy a couple of years ago were in different, same classification, but different conferences.
Right.
And they're, 3 miles apart, 4 miles apart. But when you run the mileage, you got to have even number. You got to have 8. So you start in the corner. Generally, we start in the top right corner, and you count 8. You draw a circle around that, and you just continue on. But it comes down to mileage and geography.
Yeah.
And that's really all it boils down to. I think when more people know that, hey, when we put the maps out there, because that's their favorite thing to say, is like, these guys ever seen a map?
Right.
Yeah, we actually gave it to you. All you have to do is click the link.
Yeah. Well, in fact, when you guys put the new football numbers out, we actually put the maps up when we were talking about it. It makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm not just saying that because you're standing here. I mean, I can look at the map and say, okay, I see why they did this. When it comes to that, though, do you worry? I mean, do you worry about a 3-hour trip? I know that conferences can kind of, they can schedule their own thing. You know, you don't always have to schedule a 3-hour trip on Tuesday. You can schedule them on Friday. And we're talking about basketball. We're talking about volleyball now, all that. Do you worry about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're trying to put what's best for our student athletes and our coaches first. But also we have to go by the rules that have been put in place by the member schools. And I know I keep saying that, but like we don't have the ability. It's like, oh, well, they're in this conference. Let's just move them over there.
Sure.
And so in basketball, we have a little more flexibility to do that because we don't have the cap conferences. But we can't say, oh, your conference has got 4 and they've got 12, because guess what? You still only take 4 to a region. And so you have to have some kind of equity at some point. But we certainly do look at it. We redo it, then we redo it again. And then when we finish it, we don't just say, okay, here it is. It's approved by our board of directors, which are elected from those activity districts we talked about earlier. Those are elected positions by their peers, not by the AAA, by their peers, and then they approve it.
Right.
And in schools, we saw this in basketball. You have the ability to appeal your assignment. To do that, what you have to do is you have to get 2/3 vote from your current conference and 2/3 vote from your new conference to be able to move. Yeah. And the board of directors would then approve it after that point. We had 2 that appealed that. The numbers were pretty similar. The mileage was pretty similar. Well, there was one instance the mileage was 7 miles difference. I mean, so at that point, you're splitting hairs, but the school wanted what they traditionally had done. And so so obviously it doesn't matter to us. It's all about what the schools want. The conferences approved that. They got 2/3 vote from both conferences, and then our board approved it.
And you talk about it being a thankless job. When you talk about maps and you talk about mileage, you're talking about 2 major population centers in the state of Arkansas that are about 2.5 hours away from each other. And then you have a lot of barren land. I don't say barren, but, it's small town here, small town there. I mean, everywhere you go, it's a small town. There's not a lot of population there. I mean, a place like where I'm from, Russellville, it's 28,000 people there. I mean, we consider that a large town. I mean, that's a hub for many miles apart. It's got to be a hard job to be able to put it all together, because you do know that, Highland's up there in the northeast corner, and they've got to play a certain amount on their schedule. There's only so many towns that you can choose from.
Yeah, well, it's all about the enrollment.
Right.
And so there are a lot of schools in northeast Arkansas that are smaller. And so the conferences up there kind of make sense. There's a lot of schools in northwest Arkansas that are around the same size.
Yes.
The Prairie Groves, the Pea Ridges, the Gentrys, they're in the same conference for a lot of those sports. And of course, the big schools, the 6A in basketball and every other sport, and 7A in football. But you've got, Mountain Home and El Dorado by themselves. And, Harrison's dropping down to 4A in the next cycle, but they were in that equation at 5A.
Right.
So you've got some outliers that cause the mileage to deviate extreme, but also it wouldn't make sense to put, El Dorado in a 4A conference just because they're around 4A schools.
Exactly.
That's not fair to the 4A schools because, okay, this school's got, 80, 30, 40% more than we do. And so we have to be fair to the numbers as far as enrollment, which are submitted by the Department of Education. They're not submitted by the school. A lot of people say, well, they fudge the numbers.
Right.
Well, they're not going to fudge the numbers to the Department of Education because that means they get less funding.
Right.
And so they're going to submit the real numbers. We get it from them, and that's how we divvy up the classifications.
That is such a good point, by the way. What you maybe the most informative thing that has been said in this interview is what you just said right there about the numbers, because I have heard that a lot of, well, they say they have this many, but they don't really have this many. They've got more than that, but You're right. It's not, and they get whatever it is, $8,000 a kid. They're not going to fudge on that no matter what.
That's right. The schools need that to pay for teachers, to pay for staff, to upgrade facilities. They need those funds. So they're not going to lie. It's like, if I've got a high school that's got 415 kids, I'm not going to turn in 380. Because guess what? That's a lot of money that I'm going to be saying, no, I don't need that.
Right.
Like no school is ever going to say that, because guess what? Those schools want what's best for their students, what's best for their staff, and they need money to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we wanted to touch on was how you guys select your sites. And so tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, so it's 100% open to bids, if you want to call it that, the selection. So what you have to do is school will tell us, hey, we want to host 2A regional basketball. We want to host a 4A baseball state tournament. And so they fill out a form, and every January, I believe it's the second week in January, we meet in North Little Rock, and everybody who bids on a sport for the entire calendar year come and pitches their idea and their proposal to our board. And then it's voted on. So every school across the state, every park across the state, like Majestic Park is partnering with Hot Springs. So you have to have a member school attached to you, but anybody can bid. It's just the best word we can use for it on any kind of postseason tournament, and then have the option of our board to vote for it. And that's how we went from the University of Central Arkansas, our Weekend of Champions, to Majestic Park. But that's how every tournament, and basketball is obviously the biggest. I mean, it's a 4 or 5 hour meeting that everybody sits through, but everybody has an equal amount to have a chance to be able to host a tournament, no matter geography, because we want our schools to be able to show off their facilities.
Sure.
And everybody says, well, why don't you have them all centrally located? That's the big, why don't you have every state tournament in Little Rock? Well, that's not fair to Jonesboro or to Texarkana or to Hamburg to have to drive to Little Rock every year. So we allow the schools, no matter where they are on the map, to be able to host a state tournament if they have facilities. Of course, there's always a requirement as far as seating and hotels in the area and things like that. But we want everybody to be able to show off these brand new facilities that they're building.
How much money do they get from that?
So the schools, it's all about, they get the concession stands, they get part of the gate, they get anything from program sales. We don't get any of that. What we get from that is nothing. So obviously ticket sales, because we have to pay for the officials in the postseason. Sure. The host sites don't pay for that. We have to pay for the trophies, things like that. But the sites pay $0 to host.
Now, again, a common misconception there. You talk about people coming in, talk about percentages and different things of that nature. What would you say when it comes down to the very end and you're trying to decide between School A and School B? What do you think the difference is there?
Yeah, I can't speak for our board. Yeah. They make that decision. And again, that panel, that group of superintendents, principals, assistant superintendents that were going to voted on, it may depend on where it was last year, because they have a list of where it was the last 5 years. Maybe you haven't hosted in your part of the state in the last 3 or 4 years, so maybe you would have an advantage to that. Maybe you've got a brand new arena that seats more and you've got more in around your town. It really does vary from event to event or tournament to tournament, but geography has a little bit to do with it. But realistically, it's more about who has had the opportunity to host more recently. If it's been in Northwest Arkansas, or at least that direction, say west of Russellville back-to-back years, odds are it's going to go to a different part of the state if someone in that part of the state puts in a submission to host. A lot of times, say like Palestine Wheatley has hosted 2A baseball and softball back-to-back years in state tournament. Nobody else put in a bid. So it's kind of hard to get beat when nobody else wants it.
Sure.
And so obviously they're going to get that acceptance.
And they played to their advantage because they won state tournament.
That's right, as a 4 seed.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, well, Bobby, I think, man, we've covered so much of it. I do appreciate you taking time with us just to sit down and kind of just give an overview of what it's like here at the AAA. What are the processes, that sort of thing. I think it's something that people should know and be informed about.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you reaching out, because after you did the interview with Coach Banning, you and I were texting back and forth. The first thing I did, I thanked you for doing it, because I think more people need to know that schools have the ability to propose rule changes. And there's a lot of people, whether they want to know or maybe don't want to know about how things are actually done. And hopefully they'll take the time to watch this video. I know I talk a little too much and I ramble, but hopefully they'll watch this and become a little more informed about what their schools are involved in and realize that, hey, my school has just as much power as anybody else. That AAA has zero authority other than enforcing the rules. And we hope that schools can understand, hey, I can make a difference if I want to. And that's the biggest thing. They have to want to be able to make a difference.
Bobby Swofford, AAA, and he's given out his overview and just kind of processes about what goes on behind the scenes here at the Arkansas Activities Association. We say thank you for watching, and make sure that you stay tuned to the Arkansas Sports Network, both Facebook and YouTube, for more content just like this.